Hey, this is Chadillac with the Cage Rage podcast, and I'm here with Scott Anthony, and I'm really happy to do an alternative Cage Rage podcast.
Hey, glad to join you, Chad, as always. And now let's talk about the hustle, the game, right? The economy in America, and whether you're going to slave for somebody else or my uncle once told me to be an entrepreneur is to work 16 hours for yourself instead of 8 hours for the other guy. And I still choose the 16. Let's get into it, brother.
Hey, I'm Chadillac. This is the Cage Rage podcast, and I'm here with Scott Anthony Piatt, and we are talking about, dang it, Piatt or Piatt?
American Piatt.
Piatt. God
American
damn it.
Piatt.
It's so easy for me to say Piatt. I don't know why that is.
Okay. And since you're doing it, it's Anthony Scott, not Scott Anthony.
God dang it. Okay, yep. Anthony Scott
right
Piatt.
there.
Scott Anthony
Yep.
Scott Piatt. Okay, I should know that after 25 years. Okay, here we go. 3, 2, 1. Hey, this is Chadillac with the Cage Rage podcast. Don't forget to subscribe below. Shameless pander. Hey, I'm here with guest host Anthony Scott Piatt, and we're here to talk about something a little bit different today, the great American hustle. How you doing, Scotty?
I'm doing great, Chad. Thanks for having me back. Let's get into it, right? What you gonna do for your career, your job, find something you love and you're not working at all, or are you going to go to work at the factory and hope they don't lay you off before you hit retirement or whatnot? Let's get into that, brother.
Well, hey, look, before we go too far into anything, I want to point something out, and that's that I know you've always been involved in the community and you've been an activist. I've tried my best to, in some way or another, help and be involved in some small way. Started a few 501c3s here and there. Most of the time I found it better just to give people cash than I have to donate to large organizations, because at least I know the money's going to somebody directly, and that's what I do now. But having said that, my point is that volunteer work always pays off no matter what. I've battled depression and anxiety my entire life. It's no secret that I've battled addiction my entire life, and it's been something I've had to overcome. And as an adult, I've had several reoccurrences of all three of those, and have I don't know how you say it, chained the beast, if you will. But you know, it always lies in wait, and it could always come back to get me at any time. So I have found that through volunteering and through helping others, that is the one thing that has been more critically important to helping me, and it's been more cathartic for me than anything else. Whenever I start to feel like I'm looking up at the world and the world is all looking down at me, all I have to do is look down and I find that there's somebody that needs a hand up. Having said that, that has always been the thing that has also led into some great coincidence of circumstances that has led to some new set of circumstances that's wound up being a new business for me. Have you experienced things like that, Scott?
Oh, for sure. I mean, just the instant gratification when you know you're helping somebody. You know, whether I started a food bank project with Center for Sustainable Living, donated a freezer and a fridge to them, and showed them how to go to the food bank and then distribute that food. And lucky, you know, that was organic, a lot of organic food with the Tree of Life here in Bloomington, Indiana. And they quit distributing. It morphs, it grows, it changes. And I've been on WFHB community radio out of Bloomington. No commercials. No money, you know, it's just community support, volunteer ran, 250 people there, 3.5 of them get paid. That's it.
Wow.
Your program director, music director, your news director, great news department, And I think they have an assistant news director that gets a half pay or something. My point being is I've been there 22 years and don't make a dime. In fact, we give money during the fund drives to them. We do the pledge matching and stuff, my co-host and I. So, I pay to do that job, and I love it. And
I pay to do your job. I mean?
Yeah. So, and I just want to say, hey, that as we get into this is not about your resume or my resume to blow ourselves up. This is just like any story or biography or whatnot, or history. This is for people that watching that are maybe trying to figure it out or have a little doubt about their choices. It is a struggle. It is tough. As I mentioned,
yes.
Entrepreneur means 16 hours for yourself instead of 8 hours for the other guy. But
if
you love it, if you love what you're doing, right, and you're flexible and you're able to make connections, and I don't mean the traditional networking necessarily. I mean make connections for things that you love and in jobs that you do, and if you can connect them. For example, I write for, I've been at WFHB for a long time. Through that, I got invited by another DJ that does world music to do world music publicity. Did that for a few years. Then with David Grisman and the Skatalites as my sort of keystone clients, started, Fly on the Wall Media, ran that for 15 years. Music industry changed, fell out, CDs weren't being sold. I let that kind of go dormant. I'll still work for Grisman when he needs me, tour support and whatnot. Still love lots of those guys, but I basically let that go semi-retirement, if you will, for the publicity. Now, we were able to win some Grammys. Terrance Simien, the first Zydeko Grammy at its own category instead of folk music. So Terrance Simien and Cubanismo, we got nominated for that one too. So I'm able to get these in the hands of journalists, and then those journalists are the voters, so then they vote for the guy that they've already heard because you sent it to them,
Yeah.
But then that morphed, and I let that go, and then started writing for Ryder Magazine. I had to write all the press releases for the music anyway. Ryder Magazine asked me to join them. I'm still at WFHB volunteering 22 years now. 1997, I believe, I started. My son Zion was just about 6 months old, and I started Zion's Rhythm, a reggae show. Yes. So, and I've just kept going ever since. You see, joined Reggae Children shortly after that. Another 6 months I was on what is their flagship show, WFHB's sort of, rock, if you will, amongst a few other shows, but they do very well. They're very, I'm blessed to have not messed it up, I always say, James and G-Man, the original guys. But my point is, I then write for Ryder Magazine. They put an ad for Hoosier Water Away, my actual money-making business.
Right.
I get a nice $500 ad for writing for them. That ad then makes me money. You see, when I get those jobs. So a lot of it's volunteer, and a lot of it's for actual nonprofit 501c3s. Ryder's not a nonprofit, but I still basically trade there, if you will. Connecting all these different things that I like: music, writing, culture, arts and entertainment, sports, bringing it together. And then I can go do the estimates, and my crews can do the jobs, and I'll hop in too on the Hoosier Waterway and make it. I'm able to pay the bills. I'm able to eat. I'm able to travel from time to time, all based on 3 or 4 volunteer things that funnel into to one thing that actually is. It's not that I don't want to make money, but it's that I feel good about myself doing these, feeding people, knowing people are getting fed. So I started a food bank project, right?
Yes.
It's selfish, really, because I feel good about it.
Yeah, you know what? It's really odd. I'll have people say, "Oh, you're such a good guy," and things like that. When I'll help somebody get a little bit of food or a car or refrigerator or an appliance, and I think that they think I'm being humble when I say this. And I swear to God, I'm not being humble. I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I didn't do it. And I always try to tell them this. I'm like, look, all I did was somebody contacted me because somehow I kind of became the guy on Facebook or on Twitter or in my area that somebody knew could get a washer and dryer for some reason. Because at some point I had, at one point I started a business called Green Machine Recycling. And so I had a great little logo, and I made T-shirts. And I've always said, if you want to have, especially in Indiana, where it's really easy to start a business, because for better or for worse, for small businesses, Indiana deregulation is a really good thing. For large corporations, deregulation is a bad thing. Okay, there needs to be strict regulations on large corporations because they can do so much damage. Small businesses don't do so much damage, and so they need to be deregulated, and it's kind of, they're wanting to do just the opposite. So we need to try and back that up politically, but we can get into that in a little bit. Anyway, I made these. I always say, if you want to run a small business in Indiana, the first thing you have to do is get a cool name, a cool logo, and make a T-shirt, and then make a bunch of T-shirts and give them away. And people go, well, I can't afford to do that. And I said, you can't afford not to do that. Give away a bunch of T-shirts, because that's the best advertisement, because who will ever turn down a T-shirt? And if it's cool, who won't wear it? And they go, wow, I like your T-shirt. And then they remember it. And then they go, hey, Green Machine Recycling, they will come and get my refrigerator. So they would call me, and I would come and get their refrigerator. And this is back when scrap was really high, and you could make decent money on it. So I would come and I would get their scrap. This is right after my son had been hurt, and I wasn't running shows anymore, which I can talk about that later on how I fell into cage rage through the wonderful, terrific individual, Sensei Donnie Michael. Mad respect, Donnie. Sensei, I love you. Thank you for everything you blessed me with. I love you so much. Thank you so much. I lost my train of thought.
Yeah,
guys.
Am I remembering right? That's Kokomo Fire Dragons.
No, he is Donnie Michael's Kokomo Karate. His lineage is through Sensei Bethay. Kokomo Fire Dragons, they were kind of a boxing thing. Okay. Richie Boroff comes through that.
Bethay was an Eddie Bethay, right?
Eddie Bethay, yeah, that's Sensei's Sensei. So Sensei Donnie Michael is through Eddie Bethay, which one of these days we'll get Sensei on the Cage Rage podcast, and you want to talk about stories, and there's a guy who's given till he's given till his knuckles bleed, and no one would ever know that he gives. And here's the thing, I agree with that. I'm not a Christian. I'm not religious in any way, but for what it's worth, Jesus said, you don't pray and shout on the corner, you pray in your closet. And what he meant by that was
Matthew 6:5, brother. Matthew 6:5.
Yeah, there you go. And what he was meaning by that was, don't do things and go tell people how great and how good you are. Do things and don't tell people how good you are. But at the same time, I found that if I don't tell people, then other people don't do the same. And so in that way, I try to make connections. So like we're doing right now, we have to spread the word so that other people go, hey, if they can do that, I can do that. And I want to be a part of that. And so what I've always tried to do is, just like in the 5th grade when I managed to make my first party and promote my first party, I try to promote things and bring people together and get everybody in line to do something. And so I've always just had this sort of weird knack to build things, but I don't build things with my hands. I build things with my mind and my mouth, and it includes bringing people together to do things. I build teams, and so I wound up having a bunch of refrigerators, and a bunch of them worked. And I go, hey, I know this single mom over here that needs a refrigerator, and I said, hey, you can have this refrigerator. Oh, well, how much do you want for it? I don't want anything for it. In fact, we'll set it up for you, and we'll pull your old junk one out. And so I became that guy. And so through that, I started getting, hey, can you get me a refrigerator? So-and-so said you got one for her. We really need one. And so through that, I became the guy who gets single parents, washers, dryers, stoves, refrigerators, air conditioners, heaters, whatever it is. And I love it. I mean, I'm super blessed to be able to do that. I'm so grateful for it. But it's not my product. I go on Facebook and I go, hey, I know somebody who needs something. And somebody will inevitably call me and say, I have something. And most of the time, They drop it off to me. I don't even go get it. And then I take it to the person and we set it up for them, if we even set it up for them. Half the time we don't even do that. So it's not like I'm doing anything. I just happen to be the guy in the middle who was able to do that one tiny thing. So when I say
no.
I'm not doing
Not
anything.
just able, but willing. Willing. Able and willing. A lot of people are able, my brother. You deserve the credit for being willing to do it.
Well, okay, but I just want it to be known that I'm not feigning some false humility. It's just that I'm really not doing anything. I'm not doing that much. Everybody else is doing all the work, and I always try to make sure that everybody else gets the credit because I'm not really doing it. But you hit on something very important, because what I do get out of it is I get all the great feeling of knowing I get to deliver it. It's like somebody else bought the present, but I get to actually, you know what it's like? It's like that old Seinfeld show where where George Costanza leaves the tip and the waitress thanks somebody else for the tip, and Costanza gets mad and he's like, I left the tip. I get to leave. They think I leave the tip, but somebody else left the tip, and I get in other words, I get the feeling of being the one to deliver the prize, but I didn't actually do anything. So it's
Right.
really selfish of me.
That's it.
So having said that, yeah, you really nailed it on that. And through that, man, like the doors just swing wide open because people are like, hey, by the way, could you do this while you're here? So then what happens? My little brother and I start hauling soil. So CWW Soil Enterprises starts. And so now we move soil around for people. And we have a skid steer and a backhoe that we share through a family business. And so we're able to move gravel and do small little jobs, not big stuff, just little tiny stuff, and help people out. And, we can do it for either discount or even free if the job is, if it qualifies for a free job. And so, like you said, man, everything just networks and moves into other things. We're getting ready to start an organic thing that we're super excited about. It's gonna be amazing. So so tell me about your waterworks. What's that all about?
Yeah, so just a little thing, Hoosier Water Away. We're kind of a unique business. What we do is we get water off of foundations. So we'll work in basements or crawl spaces and with sump pumps and but what we do, about 80% of our work is where a downspout comes down on the house and puts water. If it's not moving away from the house, it's going to start deteriorating the foundation.
Yeah, so the water goes into the foundation.
Right.
Okay.
And then it'll find ways through the concrete and it'll run into your foundation, crumbling the foundation.
So do you go in and put a sub pump in there? Is that what you do?
We do sump pumps in basements, but a lot of the time, see, when we go into a basement, you're going to have to jackhammer concrete up and put below ground. You're going to have to put, some gutters, so to speak, gravel, and then re-concrete it, drill hole. It's a big process and it's a little expensive. So what we try and do before we offer that to people is say, hey, if you have to have that done, sure, we can do it. But we try and start off a little more budget friendly for them. Okay. Because usually where that gutter comes down outside, that's usually where the problem is, that water's going into the foundation. So we'll put what's called a catch basin, a 9x9 or a 12x12 box, if you will, with a drain lid, graded lid. So then we'll take the water from that downspout, bring it with a 2-foot extension, put it into that box in the ground, and from that we trench and we put pipes, nice Schedule 40 PCV pipes. And we use real good stuff. We don't use the corrugated stuff, real strong stuff. Make sure it's at the right level pitch. And then the trick is we're by-hand specialists. So we can come into homes that already have their landscaping done, that already have, this is not new construction, right? So they already have their sidewalks. They already have their landscaping. We make about a 6-inch trench for a 4-inch pipe. and leave very little scar.
So you have to bring a backhoe in there and dig that all out and make a mess, or?
No, so we instead of doing that, we don't use backhoes, we don't use trenchers, we use some ergonomical they're trench spades, trench shovels, they're curved, and then we use some regular trench spades. But my point is, no.
Oh, you mean by hand?
By hand, digging it.
Oh.
Right, because we're going into nicer homes that have
so you don't tear up the property.
Right, they might have tiered landscaping. They might have tight areas. You don't want to mess up the yard with the equipment, right?
What a
so
great
we come
idea.
in and just dig it by hand. And we even go underneath sidewalks. You know, if a sidewalk's been poured for 5 years or whatever, and you want to put a pipe under it, sure, I can take a concrete saw, cut it out, put the pipe down, and then lay some new concrete. That patch will always look different than the rest of your sidewalk.
Yeah, it's going to look stained.
Right. So what we do, and this is kind of crazy, but what we do is we dig under the sidewalks. We don't bring them up. We don't lift them up. We dig by hand.
Wow.
And we get in there with, we do as much as we can with our bigger shovels, and then we literally get under there with little hand spades and get the rest. And if we hit a root or a boulder, we've got big pry bars and chisels, and I mean, we bust little, big rocks out from underneath sidewalks sometimes.
I mean, that's backbreaking work.
And it is, but you get the result, right? I was taught this in junior high, and I argued with my teacher for a damn year about it. And then I finally understood what the hell he was talking about, right? The process is more important than the product. So
explain that.
All right, so it's about doing it right every time. And if you do it right every time, your end product will be good, right?
Yes,
so the process,
absolutely.
Our process isn't going to break a gas line. I've been doing it for 5 years. I've never cut someone's electric line. I've never cut a gas line. You see what I'm saying? Because it's by hand and we feel it through, and we're not going to hit that stuff. I mean, yeah, we have it marked first, but we're real careful.
Slow and steady wins the race.
Our process is a non-destructive process, right? So it's like this. Think of it this way. The process for getting light. Now, when I hit this light, okay, I'm getting light. That's the product, is this finished result, the electricity. The process is more important than the product, because if we're going to continue to burn fossil fuels and coal, we're hurting the earth when I turn that light on.
Indeed,
if we're going to go solar and wind and other things, we're not hurting the earth, right? So what's the most important thing? If I just want to be like, I don't care, I got light or I don't, give me light, then that's a way of looking at it as the product only. But if you think of the process, then we can keep Kaizen, small improvements as you go. We can use Kaizen to always be bettering our process. I use that with work with Kaizen. I use it in my training, martial training. I try and use systems design mixed with the Kaizen, small improvements over time. Then you eventually have big, meaningful improvements, you see? So the process of getting your food, is the process just from the plate to your mouth? Or did someone cook it? Did someone get it to the store? How did it get to the store? A ship? In a bunch of trucks and a train? Or did your local farmer bring it to the farmer's market, right? So I can buy potatoes and carrots at my farmer's market, or I can buy it from Kroger, and I do both. But I would prefer the process to be local, organic, sustainable. The money stays local. I pay the farmer rather than the corporation paying a farmer that's overseas or in, several states away. The process is more important than the product. And that goes back to what the whole topic of this is, brother. The process of your hustle is more important than the product, because you're going to do some that pay off in surprising ways. You're going to do others that you have to let go for various reasons. But if you keep that process right and keep making it better as you go, then it's not a shot in the dark, right? It's an educated calculation.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
It's a good bet, if you will. Make a good bet, just like we do in boxing. Make a good bet.
Yeah.
This guy has a chance at, this guy's a 50-1. Horn versus Pacquiao. He's a 50-1. It's very little investment to put a couple of bucks on Horn. And then when he wins, you made $100 off of a $200 investment. So do I care if you extrapolate that out? Do I care if I start several businesses and they fail if I didn't have overhead and I didn't have a great big building to buy and I
You
didn't
got
have
it.
a huge staff, right? And I invest and sure it hurts, but you invest a little bit in the things, and when they start working, you have a process in place to keep up with the growth, right?
Yep.
And do it in a way that you feel good. You're not hurting your community. You're providing a service. Everybody wins, right?
Yes.
But that process, as you refine that process from past businesses, and as you move forward, you've learned some lessons. You've learned some things. And so Kaizen, and the process is more important than the product. That's how I roll, brother.
Yeah, I love that. I love that simple idea. Look, I think we could run the risk here of insulting a specific group of people. For example, factory workers. Okay, and I do not want to do that. First of all, union strong all the way.
Oh yeah.
If you're not supporting unions, first of all, if you work for a union, or if you're in Indiana and you work in a factory and you don't vote Democrat, you are voting against every best interest that is for you. Period. In fact, if you don't make over $500,000 a year and you vote Republican, you're voting against your best interests. And we can go into that in another podcast, but it's just that simple. If you don't make $500,000 a year or more, vote blue. It's that simple. You don't need to know anything else.
Yeah, I hear you,
Check
brother.
the box and walk out, because it's agenda and nothing more. But I probably shouldn't go into that right now. Probably should clip that.
Well, hey, let me just say, you're preaching to the choir. I'm a precinct committee person for the Monroe County Democratic Party, right? It's a volunteer position again, it's a non-paying gig. But I'm happy to serve. You know what I mean? And I do believe in it. So,
here's what I hear a lot of. Okay, so I hear a lot of, I work in a factory. I work at Chrysler. I hate my job, but I can't walk away from the money. I have a high school diploma. I put this into that, which would be exhausting, back-breaking, horrible work to do, I would think. I couldn't do it. I had several different opportunities in the 90s and the aughts, and then again in the teens, to go and work at Chrysler and have good opportunities. I even had opportunities to skip through, not do the 51 or the 1500s and all that, to skip through and go full-time. Had opportunities to do management, all kinds of different stuff, and I said, no thank you. I couldn't do it. I don't want to do it. I could never see myself in that position. It's just not me. I can't do it. But and for those who can, I think that's great. My brother works there, but you know what? He hates every minute of it. And I just cannot fathom spending 8, 9, 10, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, hating every single minute of that.
Yeah.
And then he goes,
don't be late, or you get a demerit and they take your lunch money or whatever the hell they do. But I mean, you know.
And then he at the end of the day, he goes, yeah, but I love the paycheck. And I go, that's great. That's great. But you know what? I managed throughout most of my life until my son was hurt. I managed to make more money. Now, I worked a lot more hours. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. Until my son was hurt, I managed to make far more than factory workers around here make at Chrysler, doing what I was doing and loving it. But like you said, it was 16 hours a day, not 8 hours a day. There was no clock. So when there's no clock, you lay in bed and you wake up at 2 and you go to bed at 2, you wake up at 3 and go, oh shit, I forgot. And you get back up and you go do something. And then you go back to bed and you wake up at 5 and go, shit, I forgot. And you go do something. And then you just stay awake. And, you know, it ages you, and it's really hard on you, and there's no two ways about that. And look, when you're doing that, half the people love you and half the people hate you. And that's just how that's going to work as well. You're going to have 50% of the people that you work with and almost anything that you do that are going to be pissed off about something. And that's just how it is. And the other half are going to be like, greatest thing, greatest work ever, greatest guy ever, greatest in the world, loved it. Just is what it is. And so, you know, I guess just to balance all this out, here's my final thoughts on this. And then I'll let you finish it out. Find something if you're young, especially in this economy. They told me when I graduated that the average person, I graduated in 1989. You graduated in 89 or 90?
91.
91. Okay, so we're pretty close. I'm a little older. I graduated in 1989. I was really young when I graduated, by the way. I graduated 2 years earlier than most people my age because they put me in when I was super early. I was way too young to be put into school, which showed in my behaviors and everything else. But
so maybe we are the same age, brother. What? I'm 45 and
I'm 47. But
so there you go.
I had just turned. I was 4.5 when I started kindergarten. So I was a year and a half younger than I should have been, I guess, because they say now you're supposed to start kindergarten at 6, for whatever that's worth, or back then they did. What? Anyways, the point is that when you get out of high school, when I got out of high school, they told me you won't be able to have a job because of automation. You won't be able to have a job for more than 10 or 15 years at best. But you won't go to Chrysler and retire from there. Now that's not necessarily true. And you know, my brother will retire from Chrysler, as many other people that I graduated with are going to retire from there. But there are a lot of different things that happened, and a whole bunch of people that thought they were going to go there and stay there took buyouts, and a whole bunch of things happened. And a whole bunch of those jobs that used to be there are not there. Farm jobs, not what they were. You get in a button, you get in a tractor, you push a button, the tractor does it for you now. You don't need to know how to farm anymore. It does it for you. Corporate farming's taken over. What's called co-oping with livestock, totally different game now. So none of that's the same anymore. Small farmers are disappearing, and with this new trade agreement that Trump's done, it's going to absolutely have catastrophic, devastating effects on small farms that we have yet to even begin to see, and it is going to get very, very bad. This will make the 80s look like the 40s. It's going to be bad. Anyways, so having said that, I got out of high school. I went to a factory for about 15 minutes and went, nope, walked out, never looked back. Started a business, started another business, started another business, started another business. And I just kept starting businesses, and like one led to another. And sometimes I would have 5 businesses going at once. And so I would literally put on the t-shirt to walk up to the house that I was selling that business for. And sometimes I'd have a hat on for one business and a t-shirt for another because I would forget which one I was doing. But I loved it. And I was creative, and I was able to do things I enjoyed. And find something you love to do and get paid to do it, as the old saying goes. I know it's cliche, but it's absolutely true. Find something you love to do and do that and get paid, and you'll never work a day in your life. And you don't have to make $1 million, because $30,000 will feel like a lot more than $80,000 because you love what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah.
Wrap us up, Scotty. What do you think?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, I completely agree with you. I remember I was with my grandma one day, and we were talking about my future, and I was just, still in young side of high school, I think. But what I pointed out to her at that time, late 80s, AT&T had just laid off loads of people. And these were people with 25, 28, even 29 and a half years in, getting laid off right before their retirement. When I look at that, when I look at companies that do retire people and then do a bankruptcy reschedule 5 years after the people have retired and cut their retirement. Now, the deal was you work for us for 30 years, we give you retirement, right? When they break that deal after you've already retired, you can't take your work back. You can't break your part of the deal. You've already worked 30 years and retired. But then they're going to cut your medical, cut your benefits, cut your retirement, right? Chrysler, similar way. Delco, they cut their wages in half. They hire at half what they used to. You look at Kroger and places like that with the automated checkouts. You look at a lot of jobs. Now, there are some jobs that are both recession-proof and automation-proof. My water business, for one. You're not going to get a robot to come in here and dig under sidewalks like I do, right? But I do believe, and this is a little bit bigger topic, but I do believe as we get more and more automated that we're going to usher in an era that in some ways is good. Think of like the Jetsons, all right? Or more sort of not necessarily utopian, but Epicurean. One of my favorite cultures, Epicurean. Everybody grew food in their yard. It was like what you had to do to live there.
Yeah.
Grow food and share with your neighbors, right? So my point being is we can get back to these artistic, creative things that people aren't worried about healthcare making them bankrupt, and if they're not worried about getting paid lower and lower and losing jobs. So I believe maybe UBI, Universal Basic Income, is going to have to come into play, right? Now people talk about that in their right, and their kick on it is, well, if you just pay people everything they need, they're not going to work hard. Well, let's think about that. They get an expansion of the services we have, so you could get like housing, but it's going to be like Section 8. We'll give you food, but it's going to be government cheese and food stamps. Or what I'm saying is, just the basics isn't enough for a lot of people. In other words, I like to travel. I like to drive a decent car if I can, right? I want to go out to the fancy restaurants, right? Maybe I have enough to go to the grocery store on my food stamps and eat, prepare myself a decent, nutritional meal, and that's what I advocate for everybody. Homeless, veterans, let's face it, a third of the homeless are veterans. Let's take care of these folks, But if you want more than the basics, which a lot of us do, then we're going to do that, because I want to go and support my chefs who are artisans, and craftsmen. I want to go support them and enjoy their food. I want to buy some art every once in a while. I'm driven for more, right? So to me, if you can take care of healthcare and not let it be a financial burden, you take care of some of these basics so that they're not keeping that factory job just to have their healthcare. They're not keeping that, bad 9-to-5 job someplace just to have healthcare and take care of their family or whatnot, right? It's actually almost anti-American the way the system is now, because what is America built on? Entrepreneurship, creativity, starting businesses, right? How can I start a business if one, personally, I feel like, I'm not going to have health care? Then how can I keep employees if I take the plunge? How can I keep employees if I can't afford to give them health care, right? I had one of the best writers, written several books, lives here in Bloomington. He was working for me when I was doing publicity. He had to go ahead and work for Cook Medical. Good company, don't get me wrong, but he writes manuals for them now. This guy's published writing about music and rockabilly and everything, and he was doing good work with me. He's working for Cook now. Why? His daughter has a heart condition and he needs good insurance. So he goes to work for a pharmaceutical company, a guy that's a musical genius, right? So if we can take care of healthcare and some of these other things, then the path that you and I are talking about, artistic, creative, your own companies, starting your own businesses, doing these more volunteer work, right? Who has time? Who can afford to do volunteer work when you're trying to pay off a medical bill that you got for being in a car wreck, or because you got cancer, or because your daughter or your son was born with some disease that needs help? I'm tired of GoFundMe pages to get people medical help. I'm tired of it, and that's a whole nother podcast, and I'm starting to get mad.
Yeah, but, you know what? I agree.
It's anti-American, anti-entrepreneurship to put these burdens on people. And guys like you and I are taking a hell of a risk to do this. I went 23 years without health insurance.
Me too.
And just thank goodness I didn't get in a wreck or get cancer or something like that. It's a lot cheaper to give somebody a checkup once a year and stop the cancer early than it is to wait until they're 4 years into it and you pay for them to die, which is expensive.
Yep.
Okay. So there is a downside to doing this, but we can mitigate a lot of the downsides to running your own businesses and attempting 5 at a time or starting one after. I bought a restaurant when I was 21, you know, it's crazy, but went on from there and started plenty of businesses. And it was always in my back of my mind, thank goodness I'm healthy. Thank goodness I'm not in a car wreck.
Yeah.
You know, and you just hustle up and hope you figure it out. And that should not be the way it is. So there are give and take to doing it for yourself. You do work more and you do have some more risk. We can change that up a little bit though. Like you said earlier, let's start voting for, you know, I'm not talking about communism or dictators or totalitarianism or socialism as an evil thing like I'm talking about democratic socialism that does not compete with capitalism. Capitalism and socialism are not opposites. I'm a capitalist so that some of my taxes can expand Medicare for all and Medicaid for all.
Absolutely. They can work together.
Capitalism fuels the socialism, and we already have Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, Section 8. We already have social programs. And so when I say democratic socialist, that's all I mean. That's all I mean. Expand the programs we already have. The scary boogeyman stuff that some of my brothers on the right talk about, you know, well, you want us to be Russia? You want us to be China? No, I want us to be America.
Yeah.
I want to be proud Americans,
right.
Entrepreneurs, hustlers.
You know, Scotty, the thing that we'll stop at this because once we get started on this is a whole different topic, but we're going to have to discuss on a different podcast this idiotic statement. Name one thing socialists have ever done that's worked. I'm like, well, let's start with the post office. How about the NFL? You know, you just start listing them off, and they go, well, none of those are real. You know, anyways, hey, listen, it's been fun talking to you, brother. I love you, man. Yeah. We'll do this again really soon. It's Friday, so we got lots of fights and stuff to watch this weekend. It's going to be a great time. We will talk Tuesday. I think you're meeting back with us Tuesday here, right?
I believe so. Let's do it.
Okay, excellent. I'll see you Tuesday at noon, and we will get rolling. If we start at 11, don't forget to get your show notes into Aaron. And man, this was a great start to a great new Cage Rage podcast, and I'm super stoked about this, man. We got to share the living hell out of this because we have something really, really good here, and we're on to something. Something big's getting ready to happen.
Yeah, good stuff, brother. Honestly, have
Love
fun
you, man.
doing it too.
Namaste.
Love you too, brother. I'll see you soon.